Well, hello and a very warm welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching a brand new edition of World Panorama with me, Frank Pereira. As always, let's begin with the top international headlines. No end in sight to Iraq crisis. Kurdish forces seize 2 oil fields in northern Iraq. Their ministers pull out of the government. Egyptian foreign minister arrives in Baghdad for talks on how to contain ISIS militants. Crisis in Gaza escalates. Death toll crosses 100. Israel does not bow to international pressure to end airstrikes, does not rule out ground offensive. Obama's offer to help negotiate a ceasefire falls on deaf ears. Neymar does the unpredictable once again. It reveals that he will support Brazil's biggest rival, Argentina, in Sunday's World Cup final. Neymar also relives injury moment, describes his fears of being paralyzed after his injury in the quarterfinal. Germany to take on Argentina in Sunday's World Cup final. All eyes on Lionel Messi before the grand finale. Bookies favour Germany, but experts don't rule out Argentina. Well, it's been nearly a week of continuous airstrikes by Israel against Hamas militants in the Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed not to let up in the campaign to halt rocket attacks by militants, which has killed more than 120 Palestinians so far. Netanyahu has rejected intervention efforts by the US and UN. Here's our top focus this week. Dozens of Palestinian youth clashed with Israeli soldiers in the West Bank city of Bethlehem as Israel continued its offensive against Hamas in Gaza. Youth threw stones at Israeli soldiers who fired back with tear gas, stun grenades and rubber bullets. A number of rockets were also launched towards the holy city of Jerusalem, escalating tensions. As violence flared up, Israel revealed that it has beefed up its forces by calling over 30,000 reservists to their units. The Israeli cabinet has authorized the military to call up 40,000 troops if needed. That is, 10,000 more than were called up during Israel's offensive into Gaza in November 2012.
מתקדמת כמתוכנן, אבל מצפים לנו עוד שלבים בהמשך. עד כה הכינו בחמאס ובארגני הטרור
صادقت على العملية البرية في قطاع غزة وربما تبدأ خلال ساعات.
Meanwhile, the US stepped up an international appeal for a truce, offering to broker a ceasefire deal. The UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon also urged both Palestine and Israel to exercise restraint, saying the Middle East could not afford another full-blown war.
It's now more urgent than ever to try to find common ground for a return to calm and the ceasefire understanding.
And I've been in touch with both Prime Minister Netanyahu, with President Abbas, and with others in the region in order to try to see whether or not there is some capacity to be able to restore the status quo ante with respect to a ceasefire.
The Israeli ambassador to UN has said that in the last few days, over 500 rockets have been fired into Israel. That's 1 in every 10 minutes. Over 80 people have been killed since Israel began to strike back since Tuesday. Israel launched its operation after a surge in rocket fire amid a crackdown on Hamas members in the West Bank last month. Joining me on the show this week is Qamar Agha, international affairs expert and senior journalist. A very good evening and welcome to the show, Qamar. I mean, we've seen the entire issue here in Israel along the Gaza Strip, of course. At the moment, war has not been declared, but is it heading in that direction?
So already it's an undeclared war which is going on, you know. They're using firepower, they have air cover, helicopter gunships are being used. And this is a strip, Gaza Strip, you know. It's closed from all sides, basically. Yes. It's under siege. And Israel is the most powerful country in that region, you know. It maintains military superiority over all the Arab, states, you know, in that region. And they have an agenda, they have an objective. This time they would like to achieve those objectives. Their basic objective is to degrade and destroy, which they call it, you know, the infrastructure of Hamas.
Yes.
And they call it terror, you know, infrastructure of terror, you know. And they are trying to do that, you know. Will they succeed? It's time will tell, you know.
Well, it remains to be seen because no one can actually come in the way of the Israelis at the moment because they're extremely powerful. It remains to be seen how the other Arab countries also react to the situation. Do you expect maybe Saudi or some of the other stronger allies, stronger Arab countries, of course, coming to the fore and trying to broker a deal?
I don't think, Arabs are involved in their own internal affairs, number one. Then second thing, most of the Arab states, or individually or collectively, they don't have bargaining capacity with the West. And they don't have much influence over Israel. Most of them, they don't recognize Israel as such. So I don't think, an Arab League, time to time, they just pass resolution, for public consumptions. They don't press for it, So neither they have, and they don't have mechanism to deal with such situations, Most of the Arab states are dependent on Western nations, either for security or for economic reasons. Whereas, the Western nations, they need Israel more than the Arab states, because they are dependent on them. So I don't think, any outcome is going to come in near future. Israel is going ahead, they have called the reservist, 30,000, But the thing is that it's still to be seen because in the last 2-3 wars we have seen, we have been seeing many such escalations in the past, they have not achieved their objectives. In the 2006,
in
then
2012, yes.
Both the occasions, they failed to achieve. Hamas remains there.
So
it's the will of the people, they continue to find. They are not surrendering.
Yes,
I'm not supporter of the Hamas at all, These are militant Islamic organization. And they have created, in fact, problem for the Palestinians,
Indeed, they have. So when does this end? Does this end when Israel decides, okay, fine, enough is enough, we're going to call it quits now? Or how does this crisis really end?
You see, Israel is going ahead with this agenda. Israel believes, the West Bank is the land of their kings and prophets.
Yes.
And they said, therefore, we will not withdraw from there. How can we withdraw from the land of their kings and prophets? And settlement activities going on, they keep expanding the settlement. Jerusalem, they have already declared it's a united capital of Israel, and no bargaining on that. So it's Gaza, they said, yes, it's not a biblical land, but they are not prepared, So peace talks are not moving forward. The international, sufficient pressure from the international community is not coming, if the pressure comes from the West.
So are you saying this situation is only going to escalate in the coming days? 100-odd people have already died. How many more are going to die now in the future?
It's difficult to say how many more, but Israel is going ahead and, they have made it categorically clear, that they will not budge, at all, They'll continue with it. They're calling reservists, and they have a plan, to implement that, to move forward, further.
Can the region really afford another war? Because we've seen in this particular region, everyone is at war. If it is, in some places it's a civil war, in some places, it's something or the other is going on continuously happening there.
Very true, Pereira. But the problem is, it's not affecting anybody. Egypt has already declared Hamas is a terrorist organization, is not cooperating with them. And even they have closed the Rafah borders, now it is open for some medicines or some, small things are moving from that direction, So it's a closed, they're surrounded from all sides, It's very, living in a most difficult situation, and now this war has come. So poor Palestinian living in these areas or in West Bank, they're having a tough time, It's a time, the international community should move forward, put pressure on Israel and see to it, the two-nation solution should emerge. And that is possible only through negotiation. That's the only way,
Talking about the region as such, I did mention in my last question as well, the entire region seems to be in turmoil at the moment. Is this, another stage of evolution that we are seeing, a renaissance of sorts, where things changed after that? Something like that's happening at the moment in the Middle East.
I think the situation is worsening over there. Most of the regime, if you look right from Pakistan to Morocco, many of the regimes are failing in this region. And because of the failure of regime, the militant movements are emerging. The liberals they have very limited space in these areas. They are very small in number. And the regime find it convenient or easily to suppress the the liberal movement, whereas the militants, they have support in mosques, charities, madrasas are there, they are breeding, and the opposition is coming from them, So as a result, cities after cities or countries after countries, we saw plunging into chaos and anarchy or civil war-like situation. Suddenly we saw Iraq,
Yes.
gone, before that Syria, Libya.
Everyone seems to be self-imploding.
Self-imploding, and situation is no good, in most of the countries, Because what happened, if you have a very strong government, when it collapses, an authoritarian regime,
There's a void that is created, and that void is extremely difficult to fill in. And some of these militant groups then, try to rule the roost. That's what exactly is happening in many of these countries.
We have seen in Africa warlords emerging.
Yes.
Once the army, breaks down, broken, we have seen in Africa. Similarly, we have seen what is happening in Somalia, or now in Libya. Same thing is happening.
Yes.
The Islamic militants, they are controlling oil. They're selling oil,
They are selling oil.
They're selling oil, in
They're controlling the sea. They're controlling the seas.
They're controlling, and the oil companies are dealing with them, because they're getting much cheaper now.
Yes, certainly, of course. Let's come back now to Israel and talk about the Gaza Strip as such. Obama and Ban Ki-moon, in fact, have both come out and spoken and have said that they are going to try and, negotiate some kind of a ceasefire deal. But the Israelis have said, they've not responded. They've not outrightly rejected it, but they've not responded to it as well. They're just not bothered, are they?
No, they're not bothered, They don't care about it, Because they know that the West can't leave them. And West is very much dependent on them, on Israel, as far as this region is concerned. It's the most trusted ally in their region. So they can't leave him. And second thing, Arabs have, the Western nations, the concern is Israel, not the Arabs,
Yes.
So they'll see to it, its military superiority, its security is paramount to the Western nations also. Second thing, yes, if the Western nations, put enough pressure, build that pressure, because the public opinion is changing in the West also. If you look at the social media or the newspapers, Western newspapers, they are also demanding. So that the hope is there, because these are democratic societies. If the pressure comes from the people in these countries, I'm hopeful next 2-3 days, this pressure would be enough, to Western European leaders, to put pressure on Israel to stop it. Once they decides, it should be over, it should be stopped, Israel will have no option but to go.
But would you also blame Hamas in a way? Because, Hamas usually, whenever a situation like this arises, it is usually the Hamas militants who actually, you start tickling the Israelis a little bit, and then Israel is forced to react.
You see, these militant organizations, not only Hamas, ISIS or any other such, Al-Qaeda, Jaish-e-Mohammed, or in Pakistan we have seen so many, Lashkar-e-Taiba, they can only spoil the things. They have no solution. They cannot find solution. They are not acceptable. In 21st century, it's not. Second thing, most of the Palestinians don't subscribe them, don't support them. Hamas is in power there. Once they won the election, ever since, and they're controlling the territory. Palestinians are also sick and tired of Hamas. There would be election. There was a unity move between Hamas and Fatah, that would have succeeded, That is succeeding, but Israel doesn't want, Hamas and Fatah coming together, So these are the problems. It's a very difficult situation in which Palestinians are living, They need international support. They need, the only solution is, as I mentioned earlier also, is a two-nation solution. The Israel should withdraw from these territories, and they should allow Palestinian state to come in, and where both.
But is it going to stop that? Because Hamas is going to want more.
No. That's not because Hamas was coming. Then there'll be international guarantees. There'll be, the Arab guarantees, Arab collective.
But then again, there is no stopping terrorists and militants. They never stop at anything. We've seen that in the past.
You have to take a risk also sometime.
Okay.
Because otherwise this situation will continue.
Certainly.
These things. The Palestinians would love to live in peace. They're having problems. For the last 60, 70 years,
Yes.
And then ever since Israel has come into that region, they're suffering.
Indeed, a decade-long problem. We have to wait and see when it will come to an end. We'll have to call it a wrap on this chat at the moment. Thank you so much, Qamar, for joining us on World Panorama this week and sharing your insights and perspectives. Well, we'll slip into a short break right now, but on the other side, we'll bring you the latest on what's happening in Iraq. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching World Panorama on Rajya Sabha television. Well, Egyptian Foreign Minister Sameh Shoukry arrived in the Iraqi capital Baghdad on Friday for talks on how to contain the threat posed by Islamic militants in the region. Shoukry met with the embattled Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki and discussed with him the latest developments in Iraq and how to enhance the bilateral relations between the two countries. A feud escalated on Friday between the Shiite-led central government and the autonomous Kurdish region. Kurdish forces seized 2 oil fields in northern Iraq and took over operations from a state-run oil company, and Kurdish politicians formally suspended their participation in Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki's government. Here's more on what's been happening in and around the world in our Globe Watch.
Ukraine's defense ministry has said it will negotiate a new ceasefire with pro-Russian separatists until the rebels have laid down their arms. The statement came after separatists fled their eastern strongholds and regrouped in the regional center of Donetsk. Ukrainian forces recaptured several cities after President Petro Poroshenko brought an end to a 10-day ceasefire. Poroshenko also visited Sloviansk, which the government forces recaptured from pro-Russian separatists, and promised to liberate the entire eastern region. North Korea reportedly fired 2 more short-range missiles into the sea in what is apparently a latest in a series of recent tests. The projectiles were launched from a western province into the Sea of Japan. The move follows a recent visit by the Chinese president to South Korea, with whom the North is technically at war. North Korea is believed to have carried out similar tests in June and July. Islamist al-Shabaab militants attacked the presidential palace in the Somali capital Mogadishu and entered the heavily fortified compound. President Hassan Sheikh Mohamud was not at the palace at the time of the attack. It was the second time since February that al-Shabaab has attacked the sprawling compound, which includes the presidential buildings and other government offices. Public sector workers in Greece went on a 24-hour strike in protest at continuing cuts in government spending. Hospitals, tax offices, prisons and archaeological sites were disrupted by the demonstration. The workers protested against austerity measures, including a 40% reduction to salaries and pensions. The strike coincided with a visit from Greece's international creditors to check on the country's progress. 2 trains collided in the South African city of Durban, injuring more than 50 passengers in an accident that officials said could have been much worse. Neither of the trains derailed and none of the passengers were trapped in the accident. The trains were moving at a relatively slow speed when they collided, averting a high casualty toll. There were no reports of fatalities. An investigation into the cause of the accident is underway.
Brazil forward Neymar has done the unpredictable once again. He has revealed that he will support Brazil's biggest rivals Argentina in the World Cup final against Germany. Here's more.
An emotional Neymar, saddened by his team's thrashing by Germany, hopes Argentina wins the World Cup. Neymar said he wanted Barcelona teammates Lionel Messi and Javier Mascherano to win football's biggest prize, even if many of his compatriots will be surprised at his open support for their neighbors.
Desejo sorte às 2 equipes, né? Espero que eu vença meus companheiros, que eu tenho 2 companheiros na Argentina, o Messi e o Mascherano, e eu acho que o futebol, pela história que o Messi tem, né, de ter conquistado muita coisa, de ter conquistado quase tudo em sua carreira, eu acho que ele merece sim ser campeão, né? Estou torcendo assim por ele, porque é um amigo, é um companheiro, e desejo muita sorte.
His own misfortune prompted Neymar to wipe away tears as he described his fears that he would be paralyzed after the knee in the back from Colombian Juan Camilo Zuniga in the quarterfinals.
Se fosse 2 centímetros para dentro, eu hoje Desculpa. Eu poderia estar de cadeira de roda, né? Então é complicado você falar num lance que...
Neymar's support of Messi and by extension Argentina is unlikely to be shared by many of his compatriots. Brazilians are dreading the prospect of Argentina claiming their third world title in the Maracanã Stadium in Rio de Janeiro on Sunday. The South American nations are sworn footballing enemies, and Argentina's advance to the final rubbed salt into Brazilian wounds still fresh from Tuesday's record defeat to Germany.
Well, let's now bring you up to date with the other sporting action from around the world in our Sports Wrap. Real Madrid legend Alfredo Di Stefano, regarded as one of the greatest football players of all time, is no more. The 88-year-old suffered a heart attack on Saturday and had been in an induced coma in Madrid's Gregorio Marañón hospital. He passed away on the 7th of July. Real Madrid confirmed the news of his death. The forward brought home 5 straight European Cups, scoring in each final between 1956 and 1960 for the club. Di Stefano played at international level for 3 nations but never appeared at the World Cups. The Brazilian media is blaming the Rolling Stones' lead vocalist Mick Jagger for Luis Felipe Scolari's squad's biggest World Cup defeat in their history. Jagger was spotted in the crowd at the Mineiro Stadium in Belo Horizonte supporting the hosts with his Brazilian son Lucas. The country's football team's fans have reportedly nicknamed the Rolling Stones frontman Pé Frio, which is a term for a person who brings bad luck, because every time Jagger has announced his support for a team, that team has gone on to lose.
Germany, Brazil in real trouble.
German striker Miroslav Klose on Tuesday became the record scorer in World Cup history by netting his 16th finals goal in the 7-1 semi-final victory over Brazil. The 36-year-old striker overtook previous record holder and former Brazil striker Ronaldo, who scored 15 goals in World Cups. Klose had earlier drawn level with Ronaldo by scoring against Ghana earlier in the competition. The forward has appeared for Germany in 136 games and is the side's leading goal scorer with 71 goals. He is the third player to net at 4 World Cup finals. Former Chelsea defender Ashley Cole has joined Serie A club AS Roma on a 2-year deal. The Italian side tweeted a picture of Cole and confirmed on their website that the defender has signed a contract with Roma until 2016. The former England left-back was a free agent after Chelsea opted not to offer him a new deal at the end of his 8th season at the club. Cole tweeted that he would never forget his time in England, adding that it was a pleasure, but now he is on to a new challenge. Pakistan Cricket Board is seeking advice from the International Cricket Council over Salim Malik's life ban after the former Pakistani captain's plea to have his life ban for match fixing removed. The PCB wrote to the ICC after Malik approached Pakistan Board's chairman Najam Sethi in April, claiming that a lower sessions court had declared the suspension illegal in 2008. A senior PCB official said that they have written to the ICC asking for their guidance and advice on the Malik life ban. Well, now let's bring you all the updates from the world of glamour and entertainment in our End-Wrap.
Andrew Lloyd Webber, who composed the famous musical Cats, will be returning for a 12-week run at the London Palladium with a little pinch of West Coast rap. Jay-Z will give an urban spin to It's the Hard Knock Life from Annie, and composer Lloyd Webber revealed that Rum Tum Tugger, which will be played by Kanye West, will become a street cat doing hip-hop. The 66-year-old composer promised complete family entertainment and also took a stand against the inflated prices of seats. J.K. Rowling has recently released a new short story of Harry Potter on her Pottermore fan website. The 1,500-word tale tells the reunion story of 34-year-old Potter and his friends at the Quidditch World Cup finals. Apart from the leading trio, the article also refers to other well-known characters from the Harry Potter series, including Luna Lovegood and Fleur Declare. The article can be accessed by registering on the Pottermore website. Mila Kunis will put a halt to her acting career after her baby's birth so that she can play a full-time mother.
The 30-year-old actress, who's expecting a child with fiancé Ashton Kutcher, said that she never focused on acting and planned to put her career on hold for a year to be a dedicated mom. Even though Eunice won't be taking any new projects, her fans can still see the starlet in her upcoming movie Jupiter Ascending, which is expected to hit the theatres in 2015. Richard Percy Jones, the actor who gave his voice to Disney's 1940 animated classic Pinocchio, died aged 87. The news was confirmed by Lieutenant Fred Corral from the Los Angeles coroner's office, who told reporters that an old man was found dead by his wife on the bathroom floor of their Northridge home in California. Jones was declared dead at the scene by the paramedics. Jones, who was better known as Dickie or Dick Jones, has also performed on the songs Give a Little Whistle, Hi Diddle Day, and I Have Got No Strings in the Disney film as a child star. James Cameron is planning a global campaign with wife Susie Cameron in order to educate people to include more plant-based foods in their diet rather than animal or animal products. The couple suggested that if implemented on a global scale, the diet would dramatically cut carbon emissions and improve overall health. Susie said that right now they were at the genesis of creating these projects and collecting the science behind it, so they were both steeped in the research and the data.
Well, that's it on this edition of World Panorama. But before we bid adieu, here's a look at how Germany and Argentina made it to the finals of the greatest sporting spectacle on earth. Enjoy. Goodbye.